The Observer's Gambit. The crystalline spires of the Nexari command ship pierced the amber clouds of Helios 7, casting prismatic shadows across the gathered war council. Supreme Commander Vexthal's iridescent scales rippled with anticipation as he studied the holographic display of their latest conquest. 19 worlds had fallen to the might of the Nexari Dominion, primitive civilizations that crumbled before their superior technology. The 20th would be a backwater planet called Earth. The humans are scattered, divided. Vexthal's secondary voice box resonated through the chamber. Their colonies barely communicate with each other. This will be a swift victory. In the shadows of the council chamber, Intelligence Director Meredith's sensory tendrils coiled tightly. Supreme Commander, with respect, our preliminary observations suggest. Your caution is noted, Director. Vexthal interrupted, his primary scales flushing deep violet with irritation. But I've reviewed the reports myself. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are slow. Their communications are easily intercepted. The Intelligence Director's tendrils writhed in discomfort. She had spent cycles studying human behavior, and something about their apparent weakness felt wrong. Like a carefully constructed illusion. On the edges of the Helios system, a small vessel drifted silently through the debris field of a destroyed mining station. Its hull was covered in light-absorbing materials that made it nearly invisible to standard sensors. Inside, Raven Blackwood sat motionless in the darkness, her cybernetically enhanced eyes focused on the data streaming across her neural interface. The Nexari thought their encryption was unbreakable. They were wrong. For 3 months, Raven had been ghost dancing through their networks, gathering intelligence on their movements, their capabilities, their weaknesses. The Nexari were powerful, yes, but they were also predictable. Signal intercept complete, the ship's eye whispered in her mind. The Nexari War Council has concluded. They plan to launch their invasion in 3 standard days. Raven's augmented eyes shifted through spectrum after spectrum, analyzing the Nexari fleet movements. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, the first expression she had made in hours. They're following standard invasion protocols, just like the simulations predicted. The Nexari valued order above all else. Their military doctrine hadn't changed in over 1,000 years. Why should it? They had never lost a war. Their tactics were perfect, refined through countless victories. But perfection, Raven knew, was just another word for predictability. She activated her quantum entanglement communicator, technology the Nexari thought humanity was centuries away from developing. Ghost actual to command. Operation Looking Glass is green. The enemy has taken the bait. Across the system, the seemingly scattered human colonies continued their normal activities. Cargo ships lumbered between outposts. Mining operations processed ore. Communication buoys transmitted their regular, easily interceptable signals. Everything appeared normal, disorganized, primitive. But beneath this carefully crafted veneer of weakness, humanity's trap was already set. The cargo ships were actually key strike vessels, capable of instantaneous faster-than-light jumps. The mining operations concealed planetary defense networks more advanced than anything the Nexari had encountered. And every seemingly primitive communication buoy was part of a vast web of quantum-linked sensors, painting a real-time picture of Nexari fleet movements. In the Nexari command ship, Intelligence Director Meredith reviewed the latest reports with growing unease. Something about the humans' behavior pattern was wrong. Their responses to Nexari probe actions were too perfect, too predictable. Almost as if. Her thought process was interrupted by Supreme Commander Vexthal's announcement. The invasion fleet is assembled. We strike at dawn. Meredith's warning died in her throat. The Supreme Commander had made his decision. Protocol demanded she remain silent now. But as she watched the massive Nexari armada move into attack formation, her inner sense screamed that they were making a terrible mistake. In her stealth ship, Raven Blackwood watched the Nexari fleet with the patience of a hunter. Her cybernetic enhancements recorded every detail of their formation, comparing it to historical data from their previous conquests. The Nexeri never deviated from what worked. Their confidence in their superiority would be their undoing. "Ghost actual to all units," she subvocalized. "Operation Looking Glass is now active. Maintain emissions control. Let them come to us." The trap was set. The Nexeri would learn what humanity had known for centuries. True strength lies not in perfection, but in adaptation. Not in overwhelming force, but in understanding your enemy so completely that their greatest strengths become their fatal weaknesses. Dawn was coming to Helios 7, and with it, a lesson the Nexeri would never forget. Silent Symphony. The invasion began exactly as planned, which should have been Fleet Commander Thex's first warning. The Nexeri war fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline ships casting rainbow refractions across the void. Before them lay the human colony of New Haven, its defensive platforms appearing primitive and vulnerable. "Multiple targets acquired," reported Tactical Officer Sinra, her voice modulated with barely contained excitement. "Their orbital defenses are exactly where intelligence predicted." Thex's secondary hearts pulsed with an unfamiliar rhythm. 20 years of military service had taught him that no battle plan survived first contact with the enemy. Yet here they were, executing Supreme Commander Vexthal's strategy without a single deviation. "Launch the first wave," he ordered, pushing aside his disquiet. The Nexeri way was perfect. Doubt was imperfection. Plasma torpedoes streaked across space, their brilliant azure trails illuminating the darkness. They struck the human defensive platforms dead center and passed straight through. "Holograms," Thex whispered, his scales shifting to a pale green of shock. Before he could issue new orders, space itself seemed to twist. The real human defense platforms materialized from nothing, emerging from some kind of advanced cloaking field. But they weren't where they should have been. They were everywhere. In her stealth ship, now positioned behind the Nexeri fleet, Raven Blackwood watched the chaos unfold through her neural interface. "Execute Symphony Protocol," she transmitted. "Movement 3 begins now." The human response was devastating in its elegance. Instead of meeting the Nexeri force head-on as expected, the defense platforms began a complex dance of short-range quantum jumps. Each platform would appear, fire a precise shot from an impossible angle, then vanish before Nexeri targeting systems could lock on. Impossible. Sinra's voice cracked with distress. "Their technology can't be this advanced. All our intelligence was exactly what they wanted us to see," Thex finished, understanding dawning with terrible clarity. "Sound General Quarters. Reconfigure 4. His orders came too late. The human cargo ships that had been drifting harmlessly at the edge of the system suddenly transformed. Their hulls split open like blooming flowers, revealing banks of quantum torpedoes, weapons that could track their targets through hyperspace itself. In her command center beneath New Haven's surface, Lieutenant Zora Hassan monitored the battle through her own neural interface. "Ghost Actual, this is Ground Team. Symphony Movement 3 is complete. Beginning Movement 4. The ground-based defense systems that the Nexeri had so carefully mapped and planned for suddenly shifted position, revealing themselves to be nothing more than elaborate projections. The real defenses had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as civilian infrastructure." Aboard the Nexeri command ship, Intelligence Director Meredith watched in horror as her worst fears materialized. "They knew," she whispered to herself. "They knew everything about us. Our protocols, our strategies, our weaknesses." Fleet Commander Thex fought to maintain order as his perfect formation began to crumble. The humans weren't fighting like primitives. They weren't even fighting like an advanced civilization. They were fighting like ghosts. There and not there, striking from impossible angles, using technology that by all intelligence reports they shouldn't have for centuries. "Break formation," he ordered, abandoning doctrine for the first time in his career. "All ships, independent maneuvering. Get us out of this kill box." But it was too late. The human quantum torpedoes struck with surgical precision, each one targeting a specific weakness in Nexeri shield harmonics. weaknesses that should have been classified at the highest levels. Raven Blackwood's voice echoed through every Nexeri command channel, a feat that should have been technically impossible. Check. The message was clear. This wasn't just a defense. It was a demonstration. The humans could have destroyed the entire fleet. Instead, they had chosen to embarrass them, to show them just how completely they had been outmaneuvered. In the aftermath, as emergency teleporters rescued crews from disabled ships, Fleet Commander Thex received a private transmission. It contained a single image, a human game piece called a pawn, advancing to become a queen. The message was clear. The Nexeri had thought they were playing a simple game of conquest, but humanity had been playing a far more complex game all along, and they were several moves ahead. As his fleet limped back to safe space, Thex realized that everything about this encounter would have to be reported to the High Command. The humans weren't just ready for them. They had orchestrated every moment of this battle, using the Nexeri's own perfectionism against them. The real question was, what was humanity's next move? The Ghost Protocol. Lieutenant Zara Hassan stood in the holographic command center beneath New Haven's surface, her neural implants processing the aftermath of the battle. Around her, three-dimensional projections showed the retreating Nexeri fleet, their once perfect formation now scattered like leaves in a storm. Their confidence was their weakness, she murmured, her augmented eyes tracking movement patterns. But pride might make them dangerous. The chamber hummed with quiet activity as her team monitored quantum communications and processed combat data. They had bloodied the Nexeri's nose, but Zara knew better than to assume victory. Sometimes a wounded predator was the most dangerous kind. "Lieutenant," called out Specialist Jun Park from his station, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the retreating fleet. They're not following standard Nexeri withdrawal protocols." Zara's implants immediately began analyzing the data. The Nexeri ships were moving erratically, almost as if they're learning, she realized. Signal Ghost Actual. The enemy is adapting. In the debris field where the battle had taken place, Raven Blackwood's stealth ship drifted silently, gathering intelligence. The Nexeri weren't just retreating. They were experimenting, testing different shield configurations and drive signatures, trying to become unpredictable. "They're breaking their own rules," Raven transmitted to command. "Intelligence Director Myrith's influence, most likely. She's the only one who saw through our deception from the beginning." Deep within the Nexeri command ship, Myrith stood before Supreme Commander Vexthal, her tendrils writhing with suppressed emotion. "The humans didn't just defeat us," she explained. "They rewrote the rules of engagement, our perfect system, our unbreakable protocols. They turned them into a script that we followed blindly." Vexthal's scales had lost their luster, dulled by the weight of comprehension. "How?" he demanded. "How did they know us so completely?" "Because we never change," Myrith answered. "Because we believe in perfection so absolutely that we became predictable. The humans didn't just study our tactics, they studied our psychology." In New Haven's command center, Zara received a priority alert. The quantum sensors had detected something unusual, micro-fluctuations in space-time around the Nexeri fleet. "They're trying to mask their movements," she realized. "Not just physically, but temporally." "Impossible," Jun Park protested. "The Nexeri don't have that technology. Their entire military doctrine is built around conventional warfare. They're improvising," Zara explained, a note of respect creeping into her voice. "Learning from their defeat, signal all outposts. The Ghost Protocol is entering Phase 2. Across human space, hidden quantum transmitters activated, sending coded messages through channels the Nexeri couldn't detect." Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, building a shadow network of defenses and countermeasures. Raven's voice came through the secure channel. "They're not just retreating. They're probing our defenses, testing our responses. The Nexeri are evolving." In the depths of space, the Nexeri fleet had indeed begun to change. Under Meredith's guidance, they were abandoning centuries of doctrine, learning to think like their adversaries. Ships moved in unpredictable patterns, shields modulated randomly, and communication protocols shifted constantly. The humans expect us to follow our nature, Meredith explained to the War Council. So we must do the unexpected. We must become chaos itself. But Zara Hassan had anticipated this. The Ghost Protocol wasn't just a defensive strategy. It was a psychological operation designed to guide the Nexari's evolution. Every apparent weakness in human defenses was carefully calculated, every gap in coverage intentionally left to draw the enemy's attention. They think they're learning to be unpredictable, she explained to her team. But they're actually following a deeper pattern, one we created. Every adaptation they make brings them closer to where we want them. In her stealth ship, Raven watched the Nexari experiments with grim satisfaction. They're playing our game now, she transmitted, and they don't even realize it. The Nexari fleet continued its withdrawal, but now with purpose and cunning. They had learned from their defeat, but that learning was itself part of humanity's grand strategy. The Ghost Protocol wasn't just about winning battles, it was about reshaping the enemy into something new. As Zara monitored the situation, she reflected on the true nature of their victory. The humans hadn't just beaten the Nexari, they had forced them to evolve. And in that evolution lay the seeds of a greater understanding between their species. Sometimes, she mused, the best way to end a war is to help your enemy become something more than they were. The game was entering a new phase, and the pieces were moving in ways that neither side had fully anticipated. The question was no longer who would win, but what both species would become in the process. Echoes of pride. Admiral Verithak stood before the great crystalline window of the Nexari High Command Station, watching the damaged fleet limp into dock. His primary heart ached at the sight of the once pristine ships, their surfaces now scared and dulled. But it was the invisible wounds that troubled him most, the shattered certainty of Nexari superiority. "Tell me again," he said to Intelligence Director Meredith, who stood quietly behind him, "about these humans." Meredith's tendrils moved in complex patterns, expressing concepts their language struggled to convey. "They are paradox made flesh, Admiral. They build mighty weapons but hide them as toys. They scatter their forces yet strike as one. They appear primitive until the moment they reveal themselves as masters of deception." The Admiral's scales shifted through shades of deep thought. And now our fleet abandons doctrine, embraces chaos. Are we becoming more like them, or are we still dancing to their tune? In her stealth ship, now hidden within an asteroid field near the Nexari Command Station, Raven Blackwood monitored the conversation through quantum interceptors. Her cybernetic systems processed every nuance of the exchange, noting the subtle shifts in Nexari language patterns. "Ghost actual to control," she subvocalized. "The seed is growing. They're beginning to question everything." Lieutenant Zara Hassan's voice replied through the quantum link. "Confirmation received. Initiating mirror protocol." Across human space, a new pattern of movements began. Colony ships changed course in seemingly random patterns. Defense platforms realigned themselves. Communication buoys fell silent while others suddenly activated. To the Nexari observers, it appeared that humanity was reorganizing its defenses. But into what? Admiral Verithak studied the reports with growing unease. "Their movements make no tactical sense," he observed. Unless we're still seeing only what they want us to see," Meredith finished. Her tendrils coiled tightly. "Admiral, I believe we're facing a species that has turned warfare itself into an art form. Every move they make is layered with meaning." In the New Haven Command Center, Zara's team worked tirelessly, orchestrating the complex dance of ships and signals. "The Nexari think they've learned to be unpredictable," she explained to her officers, "but they're still thinking in terms of military doctrine. We need to show them something different." The Mirror Protocol was more than just a strategic redeployment. It was a message written in the language of movement and silence. Each shift in human forces reflected some aspect of Nexari culture, creating a complex dialogue through the medium of military maneuvers. Admiral Verathak saw it first. "These patterns," he said suddenly, his scales flushing with revelation. "They mirror our ancient war dances. The humans are speaking to us." Meredith's analysis confirmed it. The human fleet movements corresponded to classical Nexari battle formations, but with subtle variations that suggested new possibilities, new ways of thinking about space and strategy. "They're not just fighting us," she realized. "They're teaching us." In her hidden ship, Raven allowed herself a small smile. "Phase 3 complete," she transmitted. "They understand." The Nexari High Command erupted into debate. Some, like Supreme Commander Vexthal, called for an all-out assault to crush the human impertinence. Others, led by Admiral Verathak, argued for a different approach. "Look at what they've done," Verathak challenged his peers. "They could have destroyed our fleet, but instead they chose to educate us. They've shown us the flaws in our perfection, the weakness in our strength, and now they offer us a chance to evolve." The debate raged for days, while human forces continued their intricate dance through space. Each movement was a sentence, each formation a paragraph in an ongoing conversation about the nature of warfare and civilization itself. Zora monitored the Nexari response through quantum sensors. "They're at a crossroads," she reported to command. "Their entire civilization is built on the idea of perfection through unchanging doctrine. We're showing them a different kind of perfection, one that embraces change and adaptation." In the High Command Chamber, Admiral Verathak made his final argument. "The humans have proven themselves not just worthy adversaries, but potential teachers. They've shown us that true perfection isn't static. It's the ability to grow, to change, to become more than what we are." As if in response to his words, the human fleet began a new movement, their ships tracing patterns of mathematical beauty through space. It was the final movement of their symphony, a bridge between two ways of thinking. The Nexari stood at the threshold of transformation. The question was no longer whether to change, but how to change while remaining true to their nature. And in the shadows between the stars, humanity waited, ready to guide their former enemies toward a new understanding of perfection. Dawn of understanding. The great hall of the Nexari High Command had never seen anything like it. At one end stood Admiral Verathak and Intelligence Director Mirith, their scales shimmering with nervous energy. At the other, Raven Blackwood and Lieutenant Zora Hassan represented humanity, their neural implants carefully monitoring every subtle shift in Nexari body language. The space between them seemed to vibrate with possibility. "Your strategy was elegant," Admiral Verathak admitted, his voice modulated with complex harmonics of respect. "You didn't just defeat us. You made us question ourselves." Raven's cybernetic eyes shifted through multiple spectrums, reading the genuine admiration in the Admiral's biometrics. "That was the point," she replied softly. "Victory without destruction. Change without loss." In orbit above them, the combined fleets of both species held position in a formation that would have been impossible weeks ago, a perfect blend of Nexari precision and human adaptability. Each ship's position represented a letter in a new language they were creating together. "We monitored your civilization for years," Zora explained, her neural interface projecting data streams that the Nexari could read. "We saw a species trapped by their own pursuit of perfection. Every victory reinforced your patterns until they became chains. Mirith's tendrils moved in patterns of understanding, and instead of breaking those chains, you taught us to reshape them into something new." The holographic displays around them showed the evolution of both fleets over the past weeks, the rigid Nexari formations gradually transforming, learning to bend without breaking, while human chaos resolved into elegant patterns that honored structure while embracing change. "Your ghost protocol," Verathak observed. "It wasn't just a military strategy, was it?" "No," Raven confirmed. "It was an invitation to dance." In the space around them, Ships of both species continued their intricate movements, each maneuver simultaneously a military exercise and a form of communication. The Nexari were learning that perfection could be found in adaptation, while humanity discovered the beauty of structure within chaos. "We stand at a crossroads," Admiral Verthak addressed the assembled High Command. "For millennia, we sought perfection through unchanging patterns. The humans have shown us a different path, perfection through evolution." Supreme Commander Vexthal, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "And what of our pride? Our traditions?" "They remain," Zara answered, her voice carrying the weight of understanding. "But they grow like living things should. Static perfection is just another word for death." The quantum sensors throughout the system recorded everything, watching as two civilizations found a way to bridge the gap between their philosophies. Human adaptability tempered Nexari precision. Nexari structure guided human chaos. "We propose an alliance," Raven stated, her cybernetic systems interfacing directly with Nexari communications, not based on dominance or submission, but on mutual growth, each teaching the other, each becoming more than they were. The Nexari Council chamber erupted in a symphony of colors as members' scales shifted through complex emotional patterns. This was unprecedented, yet somehow felt inevitable, like the next logical step in their species' evolution. "The universe is vast," Admiral Verthak replied, his scales settling into the deep blue of certainty, "and it holds challenges that neither of our species could face alone. Together, though, together," Myrith continued, "we become something new, something that honors both our natures while transcending their limitations." In her mind, Zara accessed the quantum network, monitoring the ripples of change spreading through both civilizations. The Ghost Protocol had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, not just preventing a war, but catalyzing a transformation. "The dance continues," Raven observed, watching the combined fleet movements through her enhanced vision. "But now we move as partners rather than opponents." The formal alliance was signed in both physical and quantum space, each species contributing their unique perspectives to create something unprecedented. The Nexari learned to embrace change without losing their core identity, while humanity discovered new depths of order within their chaos. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Verthak approached Raven privately. "You could have destroyed us," he noted. "Why choose this path instead?" Raven's cybernetic eyes met his gaze. "Because true victory isn't about defeating an enemy. It's about transcending the need for enemies altogether." Above them, the combined fleet began a new movement, their ships tracing patterns of mathematical beauty through space. It was neither purely Nexari nor purely human, but something entirely new, a dawn of understanding that would reshape both civilizations forever. The ghost had become flesh, the perfect had learned to change, and in the space between order and chaos, two species had found a way to dance together among the stars.